come back out of it and now share that experience and show how we progress once we survive such encounters like this. And by the way, everybody, that's Pete Turner on the screen with us. He's my co-host on the show, and he's also the founder of the Break It Down show. And I strongly recommend, if you get a chance to catch his shows, take the time and see them. They're pretty fascinating. Thanks, anyway, well, you got that coming. You got a great show, Pete. Shannon, if you wouldn't mind starting with what led up to the event that brought you to the crisis that you survived. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
So from what I remember, because I still deal with some short-term memory limitations, but basically I, leading up to my motorcycle accident, I ran a very successful interior design firm. And I have had a beautiful life. I have one daughter, and she's now 22. And yeah, and so I would say that big picture, everything was kind of slow and steady, and really, really, really empowering life that I had led, and I've found my way back to.
Interesting. When the how long ago did the event occur when you were in the accident?
So I'm coming up on 3 years. It's
that's recent.
Yeah, it is very recent. And considering from what I've been told, the level of brain trauma / body trauma, you know, I'm I'm still on a path of finding some resilience with certain things, but ultimately I have made it back and survived. You know.
Were you the one driving the motorcycle, or were you a passenger on it?
No, I was a rider. I had been riding, I think I was going on my 5th year. I used to be a passenger for pretty much my whole life, and loved it. And then one day kind of said, oh, why don't you try this? And I did. And then that led to me riding and leading my life on motorcycles. It was my Sunday school. It was what I did on Sundays with a beautiful group of people. And so I rode at that point by myself.
5 years of experience. You were an experienced motorcyclist. I've got over 40 years on Harley Davidsons. I totally get it. And boy, at any time, something can happen, an event, and life changes instantly. Years ago, I was in a motorcycle club, and I remember in one year, the last year that I was a patch holder, I went to 3 funerals in that 1 year with brothers in my club. And every one of us had been riding for decades. So you just don't know when an event can occur on a bike. And, you know, we used to pull the baffles out of our exhaust pipes. So, you know, you hear the story. Yeah, loud pipes save lives because people drift in. They don't see it. There's a lot of things that pop up all of a sudden. In your situation, what happened? What led to your accident?
So what led to mine is I generally every Sunday rode with a large group. So it was never on my own. It just happened to be a day that I was trying to get back to my house to open it up for some friends of mine that were actually coming to stay with me and deal with cancer. And they were coming to my house to, you know, go to UCLA and be in a closer place. And I wanted to make sure I got back to open my doors for them. And I literally, so I was by myself. And again, these are from what I've been told, because I don't have any memories of this part, which I'm super grateful for, is I was hit on PCH, Pacific Coast Highway, by a tourist that did not see me. And I was riding up, you know, at that point on my own, trying to get home. And they did an illegal U-turn. And they, from what I've again been told, they were to the point where it threw me up in the air like 30 feet and crashed me back down into the ground. And I think a few miracles came along with me. There's 2 big ones. One, there was an EMT hanging out on the beach that ran up and saved me in that way. Also, there was a gentleman in a car, and turned around and blocked everybody from rolling over me, which also saved my life. So there were all these layers to that one day why I can sit here and have this conversation.
How are you doing on your recovery right now, Shannon? How are you progressing?
I'm good. I'm still working on certain elements. I still work daily on my physical because I was literally broken into so many pieces, and then they had to put a lot of new bars and parts in to put me back together. So I still work on body and brain, but mostly now I focus on the brain stuff. And I mean, just it's layers and layers of getting stronger and better, rebuilding all of the, as they say, the channels in my brain. Because when I woke up from my accident, I was completely blank. Couldn't read, couldn't really do anything. Couldn't remember what happened or what I said 1 minute ago, much less 10 minutes ago or a day ago, or, so it's definitely been a progress of reteaching my brain to work and my body.
I got a question for you on this, Shannon. Were you wearing a helmet?
I was wearing very, very good gear. And thankfully, or else this conversation wouldn't be happening either. And in California, you have to wear a helmet. So yes, I was wearing a helmet. And I think, California, I'm grateful for that. I don't think I would have ever been a rider without a helmet. I think that would have not been my way to feel comfortable. But I was wearing a very full face helmet and all of the protective gear, you name it.
Yeah, it's definitely a life-saving scenario. Like I said, I've ridden Harleys for 40 years. I had to put down riding a few years ago. I was assaulted in 2020 and I had head injuries as a result of the attempted murder on my life. And I went back on my bike and I would try to ride it, but I found that I would have these moments of blank spells. I would have hesitation. And 2 years ago, I had to finally sell my Harley. And I've been on them for 4 decades, and it was really a traumatic change. How does it affect you now? Do you ride still, or are you done with it?
I don't. And I didn't. I honestly at first didn't want to give the concept up.
That's
because I had multiple bikes. I had the Harley I was on that got crashed and put into parts, and then I had a Harley here at my house, and also like a 70s. I was a big motorcyclist. I loved them, and for them, they're like, "You've got 2 in the garage. Let's sell those." I was like, "No, like don't take that from me." It took me it took me probably a year and a half to even imagine letting those go, because I wanted to keep rebuilding and getting better and not losing everything.
That's exactly what I went through. That, when you survive a traumatic experience, the things you love so much that are really an active part of your life, and you always figured it will be till the day you can no longer physically ride something like that. And it really traumatized me, girl. I got to tell you. But I made the decision I'd rather stay alive than get smashed by a car coming at me full on because I had a blank moment, an episode. It's common sense. But
and you need to kind of let things speak to you to where, and actually pay attention to how to best take care of yourself, and that changes over a lifetime, obviously.
Pete, are you anxious to get a question in there? I see you popping on the side there, buddy.
I've been doing some producer work while we've been talking, Hal. I took a crack on the noggin on a motorcycle accident one time. Don't remember what happened. Just know that people found me standing there, and I was acting like a wild man because I had thumped my head pretty hard. Yeah, and so the memory never came back. I think I've had maybe some dreams where I believe it had, but it took a lot to get back into the saddle. And I was pretty young when this happened. So I, maybe 21 years old or so. And eventually I got back in, but even just riding, it was a different proposition because the veneer of invincibility had left me.
Yes.
And it took a while to calm down. I actually rode recently. I've actually been in a couple accidents because if you ride motorcycles, people hit you. That's just what happens. But I rode a Harley for the first time ever. A couple of years ago. I used to do this cross nation ride for a charity, and this dude took a piece of rock or wood on his helmet, and it kind of knocked him silly. These are all veterans. This guy had been shot in Iraq. I'm like, what hurt worse, getting shot or getting thumped by whatever. We didn't see what it was. He just pulled over. And he's like, whatever hit me, it was worse than getting shot, right? And so people, I don't know if people realize, we're riding, we're being calm, everything's perfect, but anything, a garbage bag will blow by like on a windy day, and you're like, thank God that thing didn't hit me, because you'd have to take hands off the, and it's all crazy. And so it can go from a wonderful, wonderful, wonderful ride to chaos in instant. And look, I've seen so many accidents over the years, like with guys who ride in tight formation. That's advanced riding. That looks easy when you're driving a car.
Oh, it's not. I was a club member, brother. It's not.
I know,
I remember that as well. I remember
the
layers and there's certain things that when you talk about this, I'm like, oh yeah, and it reboots my brain.
Right. And even if you're riding a loose formation, any adjustment, look, PCH is a chaotic place, like all roads, but Southern California in particular, it has a lot of variables. And so one of the things I think it's important to understand is you can be a perfectly safe rider, and you will watch someone, right? Exactly. You'll watch someone, and I've seen this, they'll look right through you as if you're not there. And it's on me now to prevent that accident. And for sure, I've checked up, hit the brakes hard, and had that person drive right in front of me as if I had never existed. So I just wanted to make sure I say that, because I know you recognize that, because
I feel that.
And
so does Shannon.
There's the times when we lose our minds and we're not like, oh shit, I'm riding a motorcycle, I got to pay attention, because you can drift away, So
you have to stay center focused, and that's hard when you see something beautiful or feel the breeze and smell the ocean or whatever it might be. Like, you can get very distracted very easily.
You get lost in the moment of such unbelievable joy. If you've never if you've never been on a motorcycle, then you couldn't possibly understand what we're sharing, because the biggest decision for me, Shannon, was exactly what you were confronted with, and probably Pete, because he talked about a form, if you will, of PTSD based on having been in a motorcycle accident, and then that anxiety of getting back up and getting back on a bike again. Well, I want to tell the both of you right now, in over 40 years of driving Harleys, I've never had an accident. I never went down, not one time. Yeah, and a lot of that was near misses. There were a lot of, but you become second nature with stuff like that when an obstruction, if you will, comes into play. And I think that just comes with experience. And when you were telling Shannon about having 5 years of riding your own bike by the time it occurred, you were an experienced motorcyclist. You knew.
I was.
Yeah, you knew what you were doing.
Rides. I wasn't, getting myself to work. I was literally distance rides with very talented other riders who taught me, the bells and whistles of how to be safe, how to do things safely, all of that. Yeah, it was just part of.
And I think, too, that we develop a sixth sense, if you will, when you're in that type of a situation where you know that you're totally exposed elementally to everything in your environment in the moment. And in that moment, you become so cautionary to the environment. And like I told you guys, when I was riding, I went to 3 Bandito funerals in 1 year, and all 3 of my brothers were people that had an extensive amount of motorcycle experience, and life just took them out. And when it comes so fast, as you well know. I've been in
too. I don't know if that was part of this, anything you learned about me yet, but what I did wake up and remember was being mid-state, and that's my memory of my accident.
And Shannon, the Crisis Victory Show is designed for people like ourselves. All 3 of us survived extreme crisis events. And it's so important to be able to show people by example, not just in conversation, how we come back from an extreme event like you have. I mean, my God, look at how well you're doing right now. That's amazing to me, because I understand, talking to Pete prior to this meeting today, just exactly what you went through and how long it takes to rebuild all of that. But your clarity is excellent. Your cognitive senses and everything are right on line right now. And I'm so proud. I'm so proud of you, because I'm proud of me
too.
and you should be. Some people prevent themselves from coming back from a severe crisis event, and you just took it the other way. And this is why we have this show, to show the people. Pete, any comment?
Yeah, I mean that's exactly right. The PTSD thing and the rebuilding and the surprise you're getting back. We were texting before the show, Shannon and I were, and it's like, I can't believe I made it to 55. Just eliminate all the times when I was the problem. And there is still like, I can't believe this happened. I can't believe that happened. It's it's crazy. And so, yeah, the crisis, victory, surviving thing, it's a real, to accept that these things happen. And sometimes there's not a damn thing you can do about it. We just had this accident in DC. We don't know what's happened.
Yeah, I was just watching it.
We're blaming people already. And it's like, slow down. Let's understand what happened. And sometimes these things are just inevitable. You put 330 million people in a nation, and every instant someone's going to die. And
exactly,
the vast majority of it is accidents. So, yeah, anyhow, that's what my thoughts are.
Well, I think with crisis, victory, survivors, what defines us is exactly what I was just saying about you, Shannon, how we survived such a critical event, but we take on a positive direction with it. And this is what we want to show the world, that, hey, look, we've all been, I'm a former POW. I was captured and tortured on foreign soil in a country that I wasn't supposed to be in, on a mission that no longer exists. And Pete himself was a spy over in, where were you? Were in Iran or Iraq, Pete?
Not Iran. We wouldn't talk about it if I was. Iraq, Afghanistan.
We all crossed borders, brother. We were all crossing borders.
I don't know what you're talking about.
Yeah, I love you, bro. I get you. But the point I'm making is this. We all have a form of PTSD that have survived horrific events. But what defines us in the end, Shannon, is how we come back and say, hey, look, we could do this. We could survive this, and so can you. Mm-hmm. And that was what Pete and I were talking about before you and I were able to do this today. Was, to me, it's an amazing journey, because I've seen so many people in my 21 years as a doctor, having a doctorate in pastoral counseling, that just give up. They just give up because they feel that the mountain is too hard to climb.
Yeah.
And it's not. It's never too hard. It's state of mind.
It never is. I totally agree. And I've seen that. And you also get exposed to people thinking that you're going to think that way and go down
exactly
path. And I think that we each individually get to make a decision on a moment to moment basis, on a day-to-day basis, who we want to show up for ourselves, and in a kind way. It's huge.
Yes. It's very huge. And you know what? It motivates others to maybe transition into that ability, if you will, to accept that which has become life-changing. And certainly in your situation, Shannon. And, all three of us being motorcyclists, it's so ironic how all three of us have that, sixth sense now. Like, I miss it. I got to tell you, Shannon, I miss it every day of my life.
I did. And I think I still do. I think we also have to learn to find acceptance, but also find other places to find that kind of joy, because we found so much joy in those moments, in that existence. And when it's taken away a bit for whatever reason, we have to relearn to find, for me, it was a good Sunday. I sat for a long time not wanting to know it was Sunday, because I used to ride every Sunday. That was my Sunday school. And it took me a long time to get to a point where I could even enjoy a Sunday again.
Yes, I get that. I totally get that. How we tie something to that amazing experience that we had for so long. Mm-hmm. How about you, Pete? How do you feel about that? You still ride though, don't you?
I have a motorcycle, and it is fancy. It's a Ducati, and it's really, really nice. Oh, yeah. It is not terribly comfortable to ride, and Southern California is a bit too crazy. So if I am to ride, I would have to get something more suitable to the regular highways, or just take that bike to the track. And that takes more money than what I have laying around in the back room here. But yeah, look, if I had the opportunity to ride, I probably would. In Southern California is just, it's crazy the amount of chaos that if we want to find, like, you want to search like crazy things that happen on the highway, including airplanes landing, all that stuff happens down here. So I'm very particular about where I want to ride now. I don't want to take on any extra risk. I've survived too many dice rolls, so, I'm not saying I'm retired, but I'm like a motorcycle rider emeritus, It's like,
well, I have an older brother who was killed on Interstate 5 in Los Angeles on a motorcycle back in 1972. I was in the Army, completing basic training at the time when I was called in by the chaplain, and they had just informed me, and he was in the Navy down there, that my brother had been killed on a motorcycle wreck. And in California, you can ride on a motorcycle between lanes, between cars. That's the only state where I've ever seen that or experienced that. And that's how he was killed. A car pop was changing a lane and took his life just in an instant. And he was not a long-term experienced motorcyclist. It was his first bike, and he had just gotten it and only a few months on it. And there you go. Yeah. And that was in the LA area. So
I'm sorry to hear that. That's
yeah, it was quite a shock. You know, I was 17 years old when I got hauled into the office in training at the time. And it's during the Vietnam War. Our other older brother had been wounded in action in Vietnam a couple of years before. And but that's my only relationship to losing somebody in my own family on a motorcycle as a result of a careless driver shifting right in front of a motorcyclist, and life came to an end just like that. So I can totally relate to that moment when did you see the impact coming, Shannon? Did you know it was?
No memory of any of that because my brain trauma was so severe. Like I'd say there's a good year, a solid year that I can't remember at all before my accident, other than I look at a picture, I'm like, yeah, that looks familiar. And then the year after is vague as well. So there's a big chunk of my life. And then on a day-to-day basis now, it's like, what can I remember? How do I learn to remember something that might be important? But no, I don't have a last minute moment at all.
Did your brain flicker on in that year after, before you're like, okay, I'm fine now. And, and then you weren't fine, but you didn't know.
Exactly. Yeah. Because at least for me with where I was at, I didn't realize I couldn't remember shit. Excuse the expression.
That's right. We're adults.
Yeah. I would have to be told, whether it be by a good friend or my daughter, Mom, you already told me that. And I'm like, I did, over and over and over. And that was, that was on repeat for a big chunk of time, where I then had to realize that I don't remember anything, that I had to realize that, yes, I know how to use my phone now, but I can't read. Okay. I've got to teach myself to read. Okay. I'm getting better at reading. Like it was just all of these slow steps into rebuilding this brain, or reconnecting it from what they've told me over and over again. So, yeah.
It's like when you catch a virus when you're a small child. It's no difference, because what happens is the body comes into play, and this is what creates a stronger immune system for a child. No different than when we go through some kind of a traumatic event like this, and the body starts its recovering process. That's your mind itself starting to heal itself. And that is what's so amazing about surviving such critical crisis events in our lives. Both Pete and I are VA PTSD patients through the Veterans Administration as a result of surviving. So what we have is an enhanced ability to come out of, my thing is struggling with the dreams of waking up in the middle of the night in a nightmare scenario where I'm back in the jungle, and what was happening to me when I was a prisoner. Pete has a similar relationships to what he survived when he was operational overseas in the service of our country. But, when we have these things, we have to suppress them as immediate as possible so it doesn't take us into an even darker place. Do you deal with that, Shannon?
I did. I don't today. But I also realized that I dealt with taking trauma in general as a child. And when I look back at my history, I hid from everything for a very long time because I didn't want it to be a part of me. So I was a struggling survivor mode my whole life. And that is possibly one of the strongest things that sat with me when I was recovering, is like I was remembering oldest memories first. And then I was like, oh. And then I would share something with my daughter or my friends, and they like, you never said that before. I didn't know that happened to you. I didn't know that about you. So I hid, I would say, from myself for a very long time because of what I had been through. So this trauma honestly cracked open my brain and rebooted the whole me instead of part of me.
That's amazing. I love that. That's absolutely amazing. Isn't that funny how something so traumatic can also become the great healer of many other things that have gone on and manifested within us in our lives?
Yes.
That to me, that's beautiful, Shannon.
Thank you.
A great benefit came from a tragic occurrence.
I mean, and one you don't even realize you have until you are faced with it in a way. Like for me to be told you never shared that, or I didn't know that.
Yes.
I didn't think of myself as a closed off person. I always thought, oh, open book, I'm so lovely and blah, blah, blah. And then all of a sudden it's like, when you look at your full life, then you can relate, what sometimes you hide from or you don't hide from, and what can hurt you or to put you into a depression or not. I mean,
Well, yeah, I have a patient that I'm dealing with right now that was a rape victim. And after she was raped, the man was in the process of murdering her. He didn't want to leave her alive as a witness. But she survived it. She was able to escape. And she's been a tenant of mine now for 8 years. And we have a real good relationship. And she came up to me here recently and she was in tears and crying because she can't shake the memory. And this is what I explained to her to do. I said, those memories never leave any of us when we've survived such a traumatic thing. But what you have to do is pull it out of yourself, take a look at it, speak to it, and then tuck it back in, because it will never, ever, ever go away. But there is a way to make peace with it. Do you use that process, Shannon, in your recovery?
Definitely. Oh, definitely. And
I do too.
And yeah, I think it's a gift we need to keep giving ourselves.
Yes.
We have to keep seeing ourselves from a present moment to a present moment to a present moment.
What about you, Pete? Do you deal with it that way too? When you have your traumas and the memories come back, don't you pull them out and kind of speak to them, because you got to tuck them back in?
A lot of mine also are chimeras. They're not really there. Because of all of my time in combat and the stress and the band was pulled so tight for so long, that became a norm for me. So my body physically will switch into, just randomly, this is kind of what I sorted out. This is the best I can explain it. It will switch into, hey, you're in combat. And so my body goes, they get flooded with all the chemicals that happen with that. And that will put this big wet blanket on me, that impending doom that I know is coming.
I do.
Yeah.
I do.
And so that for me is the bigger thing. Like the memories of all the people and all the stories and all the other things, that stuff's there. And I certainly don't prime it. I don't like to watch videos when people get harmed. I don't need any more. My memory is full of that. So I don't need those things. And so that is a way I maintain it. I typically don't watch the news because I don't need all of that harm being thrown at me.
I don't either.
Yeah.
I'm guilty, guys.
I'm not saying I remain unaware, but I don't need the news packaged in the way it is. Like, I'd rather know who the Nobel Prize winners were for the year than whatever calamity has befallen somebody.
I like that.
So,
I like
that. Because I've seen too much of it and experienced it and heard all these different stories. So like I sort of did my own roving crisis victory show when I was a spy. I'd hear all these terrible, terrible things and see all this human tragedy, and there wasn't a thing I could do about it, right? And there was a lot of harm among all the other things. There was a lot of harm in that. But yeah, that's for me. That's more of it, like understanding how my body chemically responds to the stimuli that I can't control, and so I try to control what I can. But I mean, I don't avoid it, but I try to control those environments, if that makes sense, Shannon.
Yeah.
Makes nothing but sense.
Yeah, it does. It does. And, I think that that's the goal as well. At least that was the goal with me, is finding the right mental and physical route for me. How I can wake up and improve, and or wake up and have a really shitty day and be okay too, and be depressed and be overwhelmed, and also come and wake up a day or two later and be in a better place again, and allowing myself that, combo of not always feeling good and that being okay too in my life, that
finding your balance is what you're
my
doing.
balance.
You find, I love that.
Yeah.
You know, I want to tell you both right now, real quick, that lady I was just talking about, just yesterday, she came upstairs to see me and gave me a hug and said, thank you, because I'm doing what you said about making peace with my trauma. And she said, you know what, doctor, it's working. And I was so happy for her, because we all know what it's like to survive tragic experiences, but the coping mechanism that comes into play after you survive such events like that, like you did, Shannon, the motorcycle wreck. God, I love your positivity with all of this. And I don't know about you two guys, but every day of my life when I get up, I do a quick prayer. And then what I do is I go on site to where I look at things like soldiers returning home and how their families are excited, or people that are rescuing pet animals, things to this nature. I take a solid hour every day of my life and start my day with that. And between that, my pain pills and coffee, the day fires up great. I mean, we each have a journey, but you know what? Start your day positive, everybody.
Yeah.
You know, we're all
And again,
dealing with stuff.
It's choices. Each
It's
individual
choices.
It's choices, and
It's choices.
it's sad when you see somebody that doesn't think they have a choice anymore. But there's always a choice. It may not be the choice you're used to, but there is a choice. You know.
So let me ask you this, Shannon.
Let me ask a question real quick.
Yeah, go ahead.
I want to ask Shannon. The choices start before your day starts, right? Like some of this filtering I'm talking about. Like, I'm not going to consume this harmful stuff. I'm not going to allow these things that are designed to influence me in a negative way into my life. There's all of that, that kind of clears the signal a little bit ahead of time, right? But like you were saying a minute ago, and I think we talked about this in the past, some days you can put the bar in the ceiling, like, I'm going to jump over 8 feet high and I'm going to be super Pete, super Shannon, whoever it's going to be. And other days you take that damn stick and you put it on the floor and be like, today's just a day where there is no bar. And if I want to sleep, I need to sleep. Right. Yeah.
That's the balance.
And we're so hard on ourselves day to day that we often forget that we expect so much of ourselves, and everybody else would give us a day off. Like, hey, I see you working hard. Take a day off, relax, reset your brain, and balance that. And people say work-life balance. What they really mean is they're type A and they work too much.
Well, I like what you just said, Pete, about how sometimes we're hard on ourselves. You're right.
Yeah.
You know, people are not as judgmental to what we're going through as we are unto our own selves. But isn't that part of the building blocks of recovery when you're going through surviving the traumatic experiences? I think sometimes it's a discipline to become harder on ourselves, to not allow that which is negative to take us down and keep us down. And I love that, Pete, that you brought up about the high bar, low bar thing, because that's exactly what life is, my friends.
Yeah.
And we have to make that decision. It's the balance.
Yeah.
Every day. Well said.
Every day. Yeah. And I think that's where people get limited too, where I was limited for a very long time is just sitting in comparison to what I used to do and what I used to have, and to find a place where I wasn't trying to compare myself to the old me.
I like that.
That was a big turning point for me as well. Yeah.
It's definitely a transitioning point when we come out of a crisis survivorship of something that just about takes our life. Life is no longer what life was the days before that incident occurs. We have to refortify ourselves on how we're going to approach the days that are yet to come within our life. The sacrifices that are now going to be made as a result of surviving a critical event like a near-death experience on a motorcycle accident like you survived, Shannon. And the decision-making process when the mind started coming back into play, where you had revelation to what you had gone through, but no knowledge or no memory of it. Now you have to redirect that path. And to me, that's a fascinating topic in this type of scenario that you have come through and encountered. So what are you doing now in your spare time instead of writing? What have you fulfilled it with? What have you replaced it with?
I have just finished writing a book.
Congratulations.
Thank you. And it's in the ebbs and flows of that right now, but I wanted to be able to share my journey with others, especially the traumatic brain world. And also, I went through, but I also have been post breast cancer, post my accident. And I think that part of what I've learned is how to not expect that nothing worse can happen when something bad happens.
I like that.
And that was, it was again, a period of my life that it for us to think, oh, it can't get worse. It can. And the minute you start thinking it can't is when you've opened a door. To me, that's part of me wanting to share my journey of how to live your life from each moment to each moment, from each trauma to each trauma, and to kind of find a balance, like you're saying,
yes.
to how we can wake up and feel ourselves, see ourselves, experience ourselves, and continue to grow from all of it. And that's what I know, that this person that sits here today has so much knowledge of how to get through all kinds of trauma. and that's so that's my newest venture. The name of my book is Step Into Your Miracle.
Is it published now? Are you out? Is it already out?
It's not out yet. It's close. It's back at the hopefully final edit. Also, what I love too is that I asked my daughter's in college, but she's a little artist, and I asked her to draw a picture of me for the cover, and she did. And
excellent.
It's part of my journey as well, and how to share, that with, the world. And it just is, there's layers and layers, to life, to all of our lives. And to find the commonality, I think, with everybody is also what I hope that I can bring to others. That if some people feel like trauma is their divorce versus their motorcycle accident, there's all different levels of trauma, but it's all the same. All trauma is the same in a way that it affects us individually. Some of it seems bigger, some of it doesn't, but there is a balance, and there's an equality to everybody in everybody's life,
Shannon, what I think is interesting about what you just shared there is after you survived this severe experience, you decided to write a book. I went through the identical thing in 2020. I decided to write a book after I survived my near-death experience. And now I'm writing my 13th novel now. Wow. I've got 14 books in play, and I'm writing the final one. And what I did was I created an action adventure novel series of a man who went undercover to take on the drug cartels around the world. And what I do, each of my books are dedicated to law enforcement or military people that I actually worked with undercover in the 17 years that I was operational, infiltrating cartels and taking them on. So I get it. It enacted a traumatic experience to open up this whole other directive of my life. 10 years ago, I didn't know I'd be an action adventure novelist. And I absolutely, I can totally relate to you, Shannon, in that regard. Writing a book after surviving something. But I got to warn. Yeah, and I got to warn you, Shannon, you're probably going to write 10 more after that. You never know.
That is very possible. And I'm an open door to what life has to bring me. So I know that this is just small steps towards my new existence, because I consider myself a new individual.
It's the great shift. We've now replaced motorcycle riding with something that we find to be mutually satisfying. I know that as you created your book and you were talking about how you sent out for editing and things to this nature. I only went through that in my first book. I did the first book was called Crisis Victory. I don't even advertise it. And then because I had help writing it. After that, I wrote A Fox in the Lion's Den, and that was the autobiography of the life that I have lived and survived. And then I decided to create an action adventure hero, if you will, who takes on the cartels. and
Oh,
and ended up writing 12 of those.
wow. Okay,
you just,
I'm gonna have to log in to listen to one of those. I'm still a
yeah.
very slow reader, even though I've written my own book, but I'm a great listener.
Well, I'm so excited for you, and it also perpetuates into other things. When Pete and I started meeting in the very beginning, we were looking at doing a documentary story of my life. I'm now with two motion picture developers in Hollywood area that are creating the scenario to introduce us to the motion picture field.
Wow.
So your book may go into other things.
Oh, it's going to. I can tell you right now, I know that I'm going to be a speaker. I know that I am going to be helping others. I also know that eventually I imagine, and I don't think I imagined this, but I just see it such an open book that my story needs to be told to everybody. And
Yes.
it would eventually turn into something like a movie or whatever. But my complete story is so worth hearing. And you can gain so much from I think from my existence and seeing that, you can come out on the other end of things.
And ladies and gentlemen, that's from crisis to victor. That's exactly what this show is about. I'm so proud of you. Good job, girl. Yeah, and you're just in the beginning stages of it, my friend. Let me tell you, it's just amazing that I couldn't imagine 7, 8, 9 years ago that I'd be doing what I do today as a result of surviving a near-death experience and having to quit riding motorcycles. That was my escape from the world. Every time I climbed on that bike, every time I headed down another highway or a back road, life was so wonderful, so beautiful, so intimate, and so personal to me. And then one day it's gone, and it's gone forever. And wow, it's just.
That's a hard transition, but yes, I felt the same way. I felt like it gave me so much freedom.
But look what God did. When he closes one door, he always opens another. And here you are, a journalist now writing books. Amazing story. I just love it.
Aw, thanks.
Well, guys, as we wrap up this episode today, I just want to know, Pete, do you have something you want to add before we close out? And Shannon, I so loved your interview. This was amazing.
Thank you for being my first.
I won't be your last. Yeah, I'm with Pete on that. But Shannon, what was so important today was the positivity that you showed to this audience, that they can see that you came through an experience where you even lost a couple of years of your life. And look at that smile on your face and that gleam in your eye. And you're sitting there going, yeah, man, this is the beginning, not the ending. And I love that.
No, I came back for a reason.
Yes, you did. Yes, you did. And I'm looking forward to reading your book, by the way. Keep us in mind when you get it published, please. I'd love a copy. I would really love it.
I want to share it with the world. So, yes.
Yeah. Well, we certainly we'll probably have to have her back on the show, Pete. What do you think?
Yep.
We'll have to have her when the book's published. Let's have a discussion about that book on the next show. I want to show crisis to victory, period. Yeah. Okay, folks. Well, that wraps up another episode today. And I'd like to take this moment to thank each and every one of you for taking your time to catch our show. Now, if you like these shows, I would ask that you would please hit like, share, and subscribe. It's so important to us that we get these messages out, and we understand that these are graphic, almost toxic interviews. But, this is the kind of impact that we feel is needed in order to make sure that people understand the significance of the problems that we are confronted within our own country and around the globe. So I'm going to say at this time that I love you all. God bless you all. Hasta luego, y vaya con Dios, and go Victors.